Didn't think
Oh,
twice.
yeah,
And
yeah,
now she
put your
points it out and I see
email
not.
address on it, and then give it to the city clerk here.
Right there.
Is that Kentucky Avenue?
No.
No, this is, no.
I think Shalene misunderstood me, and she got
It
Kentucky.
looks like Kentucky.
Oh, right. Kentucky, yeah, very
Look at the
good.
mountains in the background.
It is an avenue in Kentucky.
That is a road in Kentucky, yeah.
So if this does not look like your backyard.
Well, okay, I don't need this one. I don't need that five.
Last one we were here was back there.
That's too
And so this is 8.
Oh, we did. It was right back there. My,
Okay, let's move on here. We're moving on now to discussion and action item 8A, Kentucky Avenue.
Correct. And if you could move to the next slide. You've got to appreciate the creativity of staff, you know. So we got a picture of Kentucky on the lead slide, not Kentucky Avenue. I want to backtrack just a moment. You know, this is, many times we have discussed Kentucky Avenue, and I'm not going to go into the full history of it again. I think probably you all have memorized that pretty well. But at our last meeting, when we discussed Kentucky Avenue, 2 council actions were taken. The first was you all authorized staff to go ahead and issue a request for qualifications to advertise for a multi-skilled consultant to look at creating a special assessment district to come up with a permanent means of addressing Kentucky Avenue, where we would be doing an engineering study, figuring out how much it would cost to fix the road in a permanent solution, and then develop perhaps a special assessment to take it back to the private property owners that are responsible for maintaining that road. We have issued that request for qualifications. We have received responses to it. We are in the process of reviewing that, and I don't want to go into too many details about that because I have other members of that recommendation-making board here in the audience, and it would be a sunshine law violation for us to have a lot of discussion about it here. So we will be coming back to you with a recommendation on that at a future date. We're meeting with a proposer and asking him to make some revisions to the scope that was presented. You also took another action, which was to come back to you to address the 2 potholes that are in Kentucky Avenue, with an estimate of how much it would cost to repair those. And we have included that in your agenda item. And I wanted to show you these 2 holes. I want to say that they were worse than I thought they were when I got out and started taking a look at them. And I wanted to take some photographs of them for your review, so that you could see just how bad they're getting. The only prop I had, could you back up just a minute, in the car was my umbrella. So I used it in the photographs because it gives you a perspective of how bad the problem really is. And this shows, this is the northernmost hole, closer to Graves Avenue, and it is adjacent to Orange City RV Resort. And this shows the terrible deterioration that is going on through stormwater sheeting across, not entering the pond correctly, undercutting the sidewalk and the roadway. Next slide. This is one of these this is the southernmost hole here. And this is the one that is near the intersection of Windermere Lane, further south, as you get towards Country Village. And that's a scale that shows you just how deep the pothole is at the edge of the road. It's a good 12 inches. And it undercuts the roadway again. And in the agenda item, we have explained that, you know, the reason these potholes are happening is because the drainage culvert, Raul has been out there many times, that runs from one side of the road to another, is collapsing. And that's what's causing it. So the solution to this is to dig up that drainage pipe, replace it with new drainage pipes, and re-asphalt a pretty big section of the roadway. And to do just the two potholes is going to cost approximately $26,500. To fix the sidewalk, which is really a terrible problem on the northern area, is an additional $30,000 because it's eroded so badly under the sidewalk, and because you have to address, in order for it not to happen quickly, over again, we're going to have to address the drainage issue and put in some additional piping to take it to the RV park in the area where it belongs. So you've got $26,500 for the road holes, $30,000 for a sidewalk. Now, you can't get started on that until we obtain permission from the property owners to do this work. We don't own this property. We need permission in order to dig up the dirt that isn't ours. And we need to be, there's some fancier terms to it.
Temporary construction easements.
And in order to get that in the area, we need to hire a surveyor and write up the legal descriptions for that. That's another $6,000. And then, since we really don't know what's under the roadway, we've asked for a contingency, which is $5,500, because once you get into these projects, you may see something else. So altogether, you're looking at $68,750 that we're asking to fix these two potholes and the sidewalk area. That does not include any of the staff time for developing the easements, going out and trying to get people to sign the easements, negotiating with construction firms, inspecting the work. There's still a lot of staff time that would be involved in that, and I didn't cost that out. So just in terms of hard dollars, we're looking at $68,750 in order to replace the culverts and the pipes. The problem is, and I want to make this very clear to you, is that this is just a temporary fix. We have not done long-term engineering study as to what needs to be done to correct the problem on a permanent basis. We anticipate that that would be digging up a much larger section of the roadway and fixing some bigger drainage problems that may require acquisition of additional property, or at least more easements for dealing with the drainage situation that is causing this. We have not done that type of study or engineering analysis. We don't know how long these temporary improvements will last. I view it as a stopgap measure until we get further along in putting together a program for permanently addressing this. So I've brought you the information you've requested. You can see for yourself the poor condition that the roadway is in these two areas. And if you want to do this, we certainly can make funds available for it. There's two options for funding. I've already covered this. And that, thanks. That's a great picture of the work order that we would need to follow in doing it. That's the cost. And your two options to fund this is from our contingency fund, which has a total of $75,000 in it. That's not very much money. It's supposed to last you for a full year. And this basically takes up almost all of it. I don't necessarily recommend that you rob your contingency fund this early in the year. And it was not truly intended to pay for big projects like this. If you want to fund it, I would recommend that you amend your budget and that you take the money out of the general fund balance, which currently has a balance of about $7.3 million. We're preparing the year-end closures right now. We anticipate that we have in our general fund savings account $7.3 million. You could certainly take some of that money and make it available for this road project. So it's your deliberation that on whether or not you want to direct staff to go ahead and fix this private roadway system in the interim.
Mayor O'Connor.
Has any conversation been held with the other parties as far as to payment options and assisting? Because again, this is a private road, correct?
It is a private road. We've not had any discussion about this particular item. We could convene another public meeting to discuss it. Basically, the whole reason why we've been moving forward with the special assessment district is every time, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but every time we've had public meetings, they've said, I'll pay for it if somebody else pays for it. So trying to figure out the equitable way to assess this is what we're in the process of doing. In the meantime, nobody has come forward and said, here's a check.
This is actually the first time that we actually have a real dollar figure
Just
on
for
the repairs.
fixing the
Right.
two potholes.
Temporary, I understand that.
Well, it's not
Temporary.
when you say temporary, but define temporary. It's not like we're going to put in 70,000.
5 years.
That's what I mean. I know that's temporary in the scheme of roads, but it gives us in my mind. It's a $70,000 to get 5 years into solving all these problems with the owners. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Because right now we can't go. There's no way that those roads can go 5 years, 2 years, 2 months more. You know, they have to go 2 months because it would take that long to get the temporary easements. But it can't go 2 to 5 years and still be a viable road and things of that nature. So we're in a rock and a hard place, which always happens when a government takes on private roads, because then when they fail, the government always has to pay for them.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add two thoughts,
Please do.
just to try to flesh out, I mean, the summary of the presentation that you heard the city manager is extremely inclusive. But one thing we need to state, we're going to go and seek these temporary construction easements. I can't imagine we're not going to receive them. We don't have the leverage to force anybody to sign a temporary construction easement. If we don't get these temporary construction easements, then we're not going to go out and trespass on someone else's property to make these repairs. So we're making that assumption that we're going to, and I think it's a fair assumption, but I want to at least make it clear to this council, our bosses, that and I'm sure Dale's spoken with some of these folks in general terms, but now we're going to actually be putting under their hands to sign it, and sometimes people go to lawyers and things like that, and that's Lawyers are always the bad guys. So the other thing I wanted to say is, as far as these funds, the $60,000 to $70,000, I certainly don't know where this is going to go in the future with regard to the special assessment district. I don't know what kind of allocation of expenses is going to come back for the consideration of this council. It is possible, and it's pure speculation, but it's possible that we may be able to include in the funding through the special assessment district the monies if you were to allocate them this evening for this temporary fix. But I am not saying that is for sure at all. It's just something that is potentially possible. We've got a long way to go before we know exactly what would be legally available to try to include in the special assessment district.
And do you,
I'm not making any promises on that.
Jeff, go ahead.
Okay.
Finish up.
you feel that it's also very easily, I mean, I know nothing's easy. I'll put it that way. Well, you're going to get the temporary easements, but the city can also protect itself that because we temporarily went in and spent $70,000 to fix the potholes and everything, that we don't buy the road and in perpetuity. See what
We would not be buying anything. The
But you-
documents would be
that was a
prepared in such a
metaphor.
fashion that the city takes on no long-term responsibilities or liability.
That's-
I cannot speak to the expectations out in the public, however, from doing this work. One is legal and the other is community.
Right, well, as long as we're legally protected, we'll take on the.
Documents will be crafted to protect the city in that regard.
I would like to ask one question, if I could. If this doesn't get fixed, what's the liability to the city?
These are private roads with private property,
Zero. There's no liability to the city.
not legal liability. There's issues with regard to public safety because we need these roads to traverse with our police and fire and EMS. I mean, there's a lot of political concerns. This is private property. If there's injuries out there, the first entities that would be named in the defendant's side of the lawsuit would be the property owners.
Mr. Crippen. Our city attorney has this phrase that is always in the back of my mind, which is, you may be ready to go down a slippery slope. And I'm concerned about a situation like this. If we're looking specifically to repair these two potholes, and whether or not the special assessment district manages to be approved, assuming we get the rights to get the temporary construction easement, I guess the next question is, it's still a private road at this point in time, and who knows how long it's going to stay a private road. What happens if a tree falls on that private road and blocks the road? Is the city going to be required to fix that? What happens if the next pothole opens up? And also, if we get underneath and discover that it's a honeycomb of potential hazards right between those two potholes, and it's going to cost way more than the additional $5,000 or $6,000. I'm just concerned that we're, as again, the danger of going down that slippery slope of doing what needs to be done, but to a private road. And that's my concern. I'm not questioning whether or not we should do it because nobody else is going to do it, but I'm also concerned about getting reimbursed for what our costs are, and what's the end? Where's the end of this? That's what I'm concerned about. You say that the temporary fix may last 2 to 5 years. It might take a lot longer than that to get any of this straightened out. That's just my concern.
That's a very valid concern, and there are no answers to your questions.
Ms. Marks?
We might not be alive by the end of this, but the bottom line is I took a tour with one of the residents and looked at all the roads and the potholes and, you know, what you saw on the screen, and it's pretty bad. And I think that our first concern is public safety in our city. So, you know, if we need to do a temporary fix, I think that's a good idea to get things started at least until we can come up with a solution to the problem that may take 20 years, but at least we can do something to show that we do care about public safety.
Good.
At the end of the day, those are the I'll say, competing principles that you weigh. One is the obligation to provide public safety services, and the other is the use of public funds for private road maintenance and repairs. So I'm not a fan of private roads because of that, and I hope that we, going forward, learn from that. It's one thing to be in this position now. I hope we don't position ourselves in the future. We have an obligation to provide safety services, and if you're going to put them on a scale or a balance, I believe the obligation to provide safety services has greater weight than the expenditures of $75,000 in funds, as an example. I mean, that's what we do. That's why the city exists, to provide services. Those services that people don't provide for themselves. That's what we're talking about. That's why we exist. I object to the use of public funds on private property, just as everyone does. But I think our obligation to provide these services trumps that objection. So I support I support option one. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. I agree with Mr. Mahoney and Ms. Marks and the others up here. As a shop teacher for many years, safety was the key word. Whenever an administrator came in, I'd have the kids all shout out, "Safety!" And up here as mayor and as a council member, I also believe in public safety is very, very important. And like Mr. Mahoney said, it does outweigh the cost at this point. And I believe there is a way that we may be able to recoup this money in the future. Hold on, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I do, but I will say, I agree with this thing, but I will not support us doing the whole road without having a special assessment.
Right.
But we do need to fix it now for what the conditions it's in. But I just want to say it out. I am agreeing that it's a private road. And once you do one private road, it opens up a bag of worms we don't have a budget for. But this is safety. I agree. Fix this. But again, going forward, we need to continue on with these, looking at the special assessment. I think that's a great avenue. Bring all the parties in, and maybe we can come to a decision, a solution that will meet everybody's needs. Because a lot of these residents here are residents, but there's landowners out there that aren't here. And they've got to be at the table. When it comes down to it, it's their property. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just comment on a couple of things. First of all, I think it's important to understand that the situation that the city council and the public faces with regard to Kentucky is fairly unique, and it does not, Mr. Councilman, this does not happen anymore. This type of situation is not happening, is not being created anymore in the city of Orange City. When property is developed and roads are created, they're either dedicated to the city, and they're dedicated after they've been engineered and they've been inspected and they're bonded and so on. And then before they're turned over, we make sure that they're built according to the plans. And then they're ours to maintain, and we maintain them in a very proactive situation. If there's private roads, they don't just get left out there to start falling apart like Kentucky has. Rather, the only way private roads would be kept in the city of Orange City is if there is an association of property owners that is created that has a financial and legal obligation to maintain those roads. So you have private communities that have private roads with a private mandatory homeowners association or a commercial property owners association. That's what happens now.
I'm not trying to be argumentative, but didn't that exist with Kentucky to begin with?
It did not.
No.
It did not.
Had the legal obligations?
Never did.
Well, they may have, but they don't exist anymore. That's the difference between, right now, if there's an association, it is a type of corporation, a private not-for-profit corporation that is supported by deed restrictions and obligations in those deed restrictions that can be enforced against all the members of that community, so that there will always be a source of revenue to support the maintenance of those roads going forward. That does not exist with regard to Kentucky. That is why the city staff, your city administration, and this council are working to create an alternative methodology to create that funding source to maintain a private road, and that is called a special assessment district.
But isn't Miller Road isn't Miller Road a private road in our city that falls in very similar? I mean, it's not in the city, I was gonna
No.
say, okay.
It's in the
It's in-
unincorporated
That's-
area.
Okay,
one of
that's
your-
what I was wondering. That's been around for a while.
That's where the county is,
Thank you.
has
That's
a
what I was
lot of
asking.
issues that they need to.
Yes, but they don't. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Crippen?
I wanted to be clear. I'm not against doing this. I'm just concerned about the implications down the road. I agree. Certainly, public safety is paramount. But I just want to, I'm just saying, I want to make sure that we don't get, this doesn't become a continuing thing as something else falls apart while we're working on this special assessment district.
Right, I think we don't want to set a precedence for other roads like that, to where, well, you did it for them, do it for us. So I think we're all walking.
On that, so Mr. Mayor,
Hold on, let's get some
Ready?
public input.
have you got people talking
Yes.
already? 'Cause we can make a
All
motion.
right,
and then-
well, yeah, you can do that in just a minute, Jeff. We got a couple speaker forums here. Doris Powell is stepping up to the plate tonight for Eddie Smith, the president of the Country Village Community Association, or whatever they call it.
Yes, it is the Homeowners Association, and my name is Doris Powell, and I'm head of the Welcoming Committee and the HOA membership. Eddie, as you all know, had surgery, and he cannot be out tonight, so he asked me to take his place. I don't know how good I'm going to do, but I'm going to try. I'm here to represent the occupants of Country Village Estate and also other people that live in that area and use the road, which is Kentucky Avenue. I have right here over 300 signatures, which is 325 all told, on a petition that we asked the city council to consider taking care of the potholes on Kentucky Avenue. All the residents, even the ones not residing in Country Village or in the Orange City RV Park, use this road all the time. It's the only entrance and exit that we have. And as you know, your police and fire use it all the time. And there's a lot of times the hole is very dangerous, especially at night, because somebody coming up the road, they don't know about the barricades, they don't know about the holes, they don't know the side of the road, and they have been run off the road. People have almost been hit. Well, you guys know what I'm talking about, and it's really dangerous. And one lady that we have in the RV park was actually hit and crippled, and she just lives in Canada, and she comes down in the winter, and she can hardly walk now because of her accident. That's all I have to tell you, and I thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, and I hope you consider it. I have these, shall I present it here?
Give them to the clerk,
All
please.
right.
Thank you very much, Doris. We appreciate your input. Okay, Marvin Plasko, president of the Sherwood Oaks Owners Association.
I'm Marvin Plasko, 2084 King Richard's Court, Orange City, of course. We also passed a resolution of our board, unanimous resolution, asking the city council to take action at this point. Everything's been said. There's no real reason to go over it again, but we have nowhere else to turn is the problem. And the number one issue that seems to be on the minds of our residents, we have 95 residents, is Kentucky. And it is, as you know, and Dale previously has pointed out the issues. The problem is, normally I would say wait, but we can't wait on that. It's going to be a 2-year study before everything is together. There are multiple owners. Some of them are out of state. There's pieces of the land in the middle of the road that are owned by absentee owners. It's really a mess on that. And we respectfully ask, We believe you have a moral obligation, and I respectfully state, I think you have a legal obligation to, I know council would disagree with that, but I think you have a legal obligation, and I don't think it will create any additional liability to the city. I also respectfully state that I think, not that I'm willing as a homeowner to have that come back as costs, but I believe at the end, when everything is said and done, the cost of the repairs can be added to whatever the cost would be to make the road whole again. We don't know if we have to make a Dale had indicated previously, whether the road has to be wider or not to conform. I don't know. It's over my pay grade. So I'm respectfully asking that it be done now. It is quite dangerous. I've also walked it. I've walked with our residents, and we're very concerned. We have mostly seniors, and they're maybe not the best drivers in the world, including myself. So I respectfully ask that you take action at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Ready?
We're ready.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to.
Wait a minute.
Stephen, you don't have a slip, Stephen. Come on, you're slacking.
Stephen Sanders, 623 Swan Range Road. I know I'm probably going to make some people angry back here, but I'd like to agree with a few of the council members in saying, where does that slippery slope stop? And I agree, if we're not liable for it now, who is liable for it if we don't fix it? Is it the property owners? I think that I would love to use cash in my HOA, but there's just things that we have to leave to the public. And I know there's 300 signatures, but there are more than 300 people in this just city. I really think that this needs to be either one, come up with a cheaper price, or have the HOA residents look for a cheaper price for the city, so that way we could come out of budget, or maybe look at a grant for a rural development out of the HUD housing option. So that's my thing. I definitely agree, safety is important, but where do you draw the line? So.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Anyone else like to speak to this before I bring it back to council? No one else from the public wants to speak to it, Martin?
You know, I just wanted to say that, isn't there a better way to do this? And that's to have the owners cede that property to the city, and then therefore the city would own the property and be able to improve it the way it needs to be done.
I don't think so.
That's the worst option.
Yeah. You need,
That's the worst option.
to bring it up.
So Mr. Harper, Bill and I have discussed this at great length, because what I'm concerned about is that the owners won't give me a temporary construction easement. They'll want to give me the land. And by me, I mean the city. And when you accept title to the land, you accept title and responsibility for the roadway, and you accept responsibility for not fixing the roadway, and you become the, if you adopt a child, now you're responsible for it until it graduates from college. The same is true with the road. You're going to have to raise it up and fix it up and get it ready to be the road it was intended to be. And that is going to be a very costly option. It becomes all ours once we become the landowner.
And let me follow up on that. That would be the big check, the big expense of the public taking on, making this a public road and then fixing it up. Let's talk about just the agenda item that you're considering this evening, which is $60,000 to $70,000. I want to remind the council and those in the audience that the city of Orange City has had many meetings, some large with the entire, all interested parties, some smaller with just folks that may have some development interests out there. And on many occasions, we have asked for the people who Oxes are most involved in this to try to work together to form a voluntary property owners association, or to come forward and work together to raise money to fix these things. And I'm simply telling you, we haven't gotten any checks in the mail. So where you are is either these, quite frankly, I'm being blunt, where you are is you either wait till we get the special assessment district formed, assuming that we can do that, and then the money start coming in from that, and then we start spending the monies to make the repairs or redo the road based upon what is provided for in the engineering that supports that special assessment district, or the city comes and spends the money and fixes it, tries to get the money later through the special assessment district, and fix it now. Or we do nothing. We do nothing. And then there's a real, to your point, Councilmember Mahoney, then, and to the point of the folks that have spoken this evening, then things will start going badly. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. If I was a property owner out there that owned some of this land, I'd be really worried.
I would be too. I'd get a quick deed out and sign it, give it to the city.
But, Ms. Marks?
I thought it was a valid point to bring up.
Okay, good, thank you. Ms. Marks?
I think do nothing is not an option, honestly.
Right.
We have to do our due diligence to do this, to maybe fix it for now, temporary. That's just my opinion. And then maybe we can all come to a compromise with the residents in the future for what you're talking about. So that's my view.
And let me speak to that. It's not going to be in the future where we reach a compromise. This is going to be a technical, professional study of what is necessary to bring this road up to standards, to make the repairs, and come up with an equitable distribution of those expenses about who has what interest in paying what amounts to not just improve the road, but also to maintain it going forward.
Compromise is not the right word, but what I'm trying to say is I think that we need to show them that we're going to take care of the public safety thing now and then see what happens in the end.
And that's good. I want you to understand that when you get to the end of this, you have the authority to levy a special assessment. And it is your authority. It is not put to a vote of the population. You will be asked to make a very hard decision that may really irk a whole lot of people. And that is where we are going with the whole methodology of a special assessment district, is to put an additional amount of money that you will be collecting from people on the tax bill, because for 30 years it has been a private road that has not been maintained. And now you're having to figure out a way to deal with it because nobody else can. And it's your authority, but it is not necessarily going to be a compromise or even welcomed by many people.
Agreed, but just understand, large dollar amounts spread over many years can become manageable. And we're not even talking about we're not talking about the details yet. Just if you see numbers in terms of price tags, just remember, it's spread over many years and presumably multiple property owners.
Correct.
And a professional will determine that right now. So I'm not worried about that aspect. I truly am worried right now about the safety aspect, the ability to be able to provide, to deliver those safety services. If something, God forbid something happened, we're not able to do that, it's us. No one wants to hear it's a private road. The city didn't provide its services. What were we doing? That's to me what we're talking about here.
Yeah, Mr. Crippen.
We're talking about to begin with now, the area where the potholes are.
All we're going to be doing is fixing 2 potholes in a badly eroded sidewalk area.
Understood. Have we identified a specific property owner that owns that portion?
Yes.
And if that property
I've
owner,
identified 5 specific property owners that I need to get temporary easements
and if
from.
one of them refuses to give us temporary easement, where does that leave us?
Well, it all depends. If you're talking about the north pothole, I believe there are 2 property owners. If you're talking about the south property owner, you're talking about 3 property owners. So on the north on the north hole,
Oh. That's where Santa Claus lives, isn't it?
ho, 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 please. So on the northernmost hole, if one of them doesn't give it to us, we can't work on it. And the same is true on the southernmost hole. If somebody doesn't give it to us, I can't fix the problem. It goes from one edge of the road, private right-of-way, to the other edge of the private right-of-way horizontally. And you need all of the owners to make it work, to remove the culvert and replace it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I thought it was important that we bring that up, because we're going to vote to see whether we want to proceed that way, and if we can only go with permission.
I need permission.
Right.
Yes.
So I think what we've come with is that the city that we're doing this in very good faith to move forward with this entire thing. And with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to repair the areas of Kentucky Avenue presented, option 1, with the temporary construction easements procedure using revenues from the fund balance.
Second.
Discussion? Gloria?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes. And the motion passes, and there will be some temporary relief for Kentucky Avenue. Hopefully.
Forward and try to make repairs to the North Pole.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, you guys want to just break for a minute? I think some of these folks probably want to go home. You're welcome to stay. We're not trying to run you off. You're welcome.
Sure. Good.
Thanks, Mike.
Good discussion. Good question. So you're saying in terms of.
I know a lot of people live out there.
So, welcome.
All those
Yep.
people, remember what we talked about at lunch?
Thank you.
Young getting back to about socialism, but they don't sure about
Well, we try
socialism
to
right
be
now.
fair and keep everything going forward.
Mr. Stillman better. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Right. Thank you. Because they're a tough bunch. Yeah, that's why you're the welcome lady.
She said about the whole, we told her staff that she needed to use a different terminology.
It's a social program, so it just drives me crazy when everybody
Making a mess.
wants to all be about capitalism and free reign. Well, get your free reign, people.
Where are we at now? Back on ordinances, 5A.
I understand that. I understand that. There's RHC there's all of those are individually owned property.
All right, everybody, let's make it quick and get back to work.
Couple of years now.
Annexation?
It is, and it has been, and it will continue to be on the mind.
It's,
That's really,
Becky down.
all those file folders back there, and it'll double in size before we figure out a fair and equitable.
Pizza.
We all need more food this time of year, right?
So how are you? I'm good. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Challenge.
Thank
You
you.
did.
Thank you.
Yep, we had Cheyenne's engagement party at the house on Saturday. Oh, yes, I don't have time, but I'll show you one picture. She did a 1920s. They all dressed up.